When binding your quilt, start by selecting a print that complements your design. You can decide to be bold and have the binding stand out, or you can be subtle and have it blend into your quilt top. Using Rowan and Free Spirit fabrics will give you lots of options. To prepare your binding for straight cut binding, you should square up one edge and trim from that side. Align your ruler along the fold and trim away the selvage edge. Rotate your fabric so the trim side is on the left for cutting. Place your ruler along the edge of your fabric, generally 2.5 or 2.25 inches, and cut your binding into straight lengths. To create bias binding, you need to cut your binding strips on a 45-degree angle. To do so, use your ruler and place along the 45-degree markings along both edges of your fabric and trim. Take your ruler and position it along your trimmed side and continue cutting your 2.5-inch strips. Take one strip of fabric and placing it horizontally in front of you face up. Take the second strip and with right sides together, crisscross the fabric on the right edge. Allow the fabric to overlap slightly. Pin together the two pieces to form a 90-degree corner. Place your ruler and draw a pencil line connecting the upper left corner to the lower right corner of the diagonal. This line indicates the sew line. Take the pinned fabric to the machine and sew using a Coats cotton all-purpose thread directly on the line, removing the pins as needed. Using a scissor or rotary cutter, trim to a 1/4-inch seam. This creates a continuous binding. When measuring out your binding for your quilt, place the quilt in front of you and position your binding along the bottom edge. Folding at a corner, continue around to your starting point, allowing your fabrics to overlap. Always add a few more inches to be safe. Press your seams open to spread the bulk of your fabric when stitched and folded to your quilt. After pressing your seams open, fold the strip wrong sides together, aligning the raw edges, and press the long strip in half. Continue pressing your binding to both ends. With your quilt in front of you, face up, take your folded binding and start about 1/3 of the way down, aligning the raw edge of the binding with the raw edge of your quilt. Pin your binding to the top of your quilt. With the binding aligned to the edge of the quilt, place both under your press-a-foot, starting about 2/3 of the way down on the right side. This will give you ample space to connect the starting and finishing point. Backstitch a few stitches and continue straight stitching all the way down to 1/4 of an inch from the bottom of your quilt. Backstitch. Mitering a corner makes a smooth, tidy finish to a 90-degree corner, neatly squaring the corners while creating a diagonal seam from the point of the corner to the inside edge. Holding in place, create a 45-degree fold to the right side from the end of the stitch. With the binding folded to the right, hold down the corner and flip the binding back to the left, aligning the raw edge with the bottom of the quilt. With your binding pinned in place along the bottom edge, carefully take your quilt to the machine. Insert at the edge and sew through the mitered corner and down the bottom side. Again, stopping 1/4 an inch from the end of the quilt. Repeating the process on all 4 corners, stitch down a few inches from the starting side and backstitch. With your quilt removed from the machine, place the unfinished side in front of you. Overlap both ends of the binding. With your scissor, cut the top piece of binding about halfway between the overlap. Place your ruler under the cut edge, aligning the 2.5 inch mark on the ruler with your cut. Fold back the cut binding and mark the lower binding with the pencil, creating a 2.5 inch overlap. Take your left binding fabric and lay it out in front of you, right side up, unfolding the pressed edge. Next, take the right binding fabric and unfold. Place it right sides together as you did in step 5, but this time aligning both the top and right sides. Pin in place and draw a line connecting the corners. Sew through the line and trim the excess fabric approximately 1/4 of an inch to the right of your seam. Open and press your seam flat. Then press in half to complete your binding. With your binding joined completely, place the quilt back into the machine where you left off. Backstitch and finish attaching the binding to the starting point. Backstitch again, and you are finished attaching your binding to your quilt.